What is work trauma? Simply put, it's the psychological, mental, emotional, and perhaps spiritual damage that comes from working in so many of today's toxic and insanely run organizations across the world. Now, why is there work trauma? Where does it come from? Can it even be eliminated? Well, that's what we'll explore today on today's episode of Work Trauma, How Corporations Really Work. I'm Michael Dennisoff, CEO and Principal Director of Dennisoff Consulting Group, an international consulting firm dedicated to elevating corporations to help them perform better, be more successful, and grow strong, high-performing cultures. And this is possible, but only if we're really honest about how corporations really work. This is where we pull back the curtain to let you know what is really going on at companies so you can make good decisions about who you work for, how to navigate your career, and if you are a leader, how to build better, fairer, and more successful organizations. On today's episode, we look at what is one of, if not the biggest cause of work trauma for so many people. All right, so today we're going to talk about this thing called work trauma. Like I said, work trauma is the damage that we get from working in companies. Now, everybody has this. I may have mentioned this on an earlier episode, but the work title came for this podcast from a new coaching client, and I asked him to tell me a little bit about himself, and he said, well, I've been working for 20 years in a corporation, so like everybody else, we all have work trauma. So that got me thinking, there are so many problems in organizations today that we don't like to talk about, that corporations themselves don't even want to deal with, let alone admit that they have them. So today we want to look at why organizations can be so toxic and demoralizing and awful to work at. And I got to tell you, I've thought about this for years. Early on, man, I'm like, working in different companies. Is it me? Is there something going on that I don't know about? Because I would hear the orientation video and about the company strives for leadership and to live its values. And very few companies really did that. So it was interesting. And then, I got to thinking about over the last 40 years, the amount of training programs there's been, the amount of books there's been on leadership and strategy and change management and emotional intelligence and now neuroscience. All right. And there's all of these gurus through the years who know how companies should be run. And some are good, some are not so good, quite frankly. And we had new studies on emotional intelligence, right? There's better technologies, there's better training courses, there's executive coaches more than ever before. And yet organizations are still run and led so poorly. So it's been interesting to do this. And most people who I talk to have this experience. They dread it. They put up with it because they have to make a living, and they kind of look for the lesser of two evils. What company is less harsh to work at? And I've experienced this myself firsthand, certainly as an employee, both as kind of a low-level, intro-level employee, and as I work through the ranks, and as an executive, right? Also, I've experienced this as a consultant. I've seen the inner workings. I've been with the inner circles to see what really happens in those conversations. And those conversations, quite frankly, are kind of disappointing a lot of the time. A lot of those conversations when the company, let's say, is in trouble or is struggling or it's up for a challenge, the conversations aren't, hey, how do we do this? How do we get it better? The first part of the conversation is, hey, how do we keep our job? How do we deflect attention and blame from us? That's what a lot of the executives talk about. It's really insane to me. Now, I know there's going to be some of you who say, well, I kind of like my company. And hopefully you do. Maybe you live or work in one of the companies that are an exception to the rule. Okay. But the majority of companies, I'm really talking about large companies, are pretty toxic to work in for sure. So if you say, I like my company, you have to ask yourself, is this really a good company? And are you blessed to be in that? Or is your bar really low because you've kind of worked in so many bad companies? So you're kind of like, it's good. Is it really good, or is it just not bad or less bad than other companies, right? Or do you have to say, I can't really admit that. I don't want to admit that I work at a bad company because I put my years in here and I got my 401k here and I'm probably going to retire here. So you really can't admit it. But like so many people I've come across through the years, they describe their companies as really tough places to work. Maybe you have too. Some people have described it as, it's like high school, which is kind of crazy, right? High school, like there's cliques, there's people, or it's Survivor Island. You have alliances and you vote people off, which makes no sense to me. And I would tell you as a consultant, the majority of companies that I've consulted to, not all, I'm talking about the large companies, they're working on 3 of their 8 cylinders. They're working at about 40% effectiveness or productivity rate. And that's because there's so much weirdness at the top and a lack of leadership and bureaucracy and lack of communication, kind of the same stuff all of us consultants deal with over and over. And you're like, man, if you could remove some of this stuff, this company could hum. So then you have to ask yourself, why won't we remove some of this stuff? Well, the answer lies into the root cause of work trauma. Alrighty, so here's another thing. Here's another thing I want to tell you. And here's how I kind of prove this out. I'm kind of building to it. I know. Well, what is it, Michael? I'm going to tell you in a second. I'm like one of those really bad ads that you see before you watch a YouTube video. They just keep going on and on, but won't tell you the solution. But I'm going to tell you. But first, I remember early on in my career, I was teaching a lot of leadership development courses. And I would look out into the audience and I would find these people. They were brilliant people and beautiful people. And they were managers and, they just wanted to do great. And I learned really like 3 things. One is they were worn out. They were tired. They were like overly beat up in their role. And I thought that was sad. Like good people, healthy people, good people who had families at home were beat up from working inside organizations. And that, by the way, that trend has continued, actually worsened over the years. Number 2, it's clearly that very few companies had good leadership, because as we would talk about what good leadership is, the majority of the participants in the class or the course would roll their eyes and say, well, that doesn't happen here. We're not even close to that. So it kind of gives you an insight into how companies are really run. And then the other thing that was interesting is to watch people, how they changed as they went higher and higher up the food chain, which kind of gives us some insight to that. So here it is, right? Dun, dun, dun. So why is there so much work trauma? It's really simple for me. Somebody gets hired into the executive offices. They shift from leading and being innovative and rocking the boat and committing to excellence to first they commit to protectionism and preservation. Okay? So that means they want to maintain, keep what they have, and they don't want to lose it. So that's their main function, right? So it's not like I'm in a bigger, higher spot. I could have greater impact on the organization. I can make it run better. No, man, what they're really doing is, man, how do I keep this? Okay? And once they get that kind of in place, then there becomes this increasing demand for power and prestige. Power and prestige, right? Some people get off on it. Some people just want it more and more. And you see this as well. You see a lot of people who will be making gobs of money, but they're mad because their rug thickness isn't as thick as another executive's rug thickness, or they always think they should be making more money than they should, even though the people kind of who are the workers, general employees of the company are really making that much. So you see this. So the reason why there's so much work trauma is primarily because protectionism and preservation, which it moves ultimately and increases to how do I increase my power, and how I get more prestige, right? Because I like that people look up to me. I like that people have to laugh at my jokes. Alrighty, so they no longer worry about the success of the company, but rather how to keep their own personal success, okay? So here's an easy example of that, right? Let's say Jody. Jody gets hired at this company. She's a real go-getter. She rocks the boat, thinks outside the box, is proactive, steps up, right? What do we do? Oh, early on, we promote her to manager, and then she's on the high potential list, right? Well, she's still doing that stuff, being proactive, thinking outside the box, really working hard, challenging the status quo, make her a director, right? She keeps going on, and it's going great. People love her, right? And then at one point, Jody gets moved to, to become an executive vice president or a vice president. All of a sudden, Jody now is making $450K a year, more than that in bonuses. Her kid's private school is being paid for. Her car is being paid for. There's deferred compensation. All of this compensation, by the way, that the majority of employees don't even know about, don't even know that's happening. And all of a sudden, Jody has this. She reached her pinnacle. She's got what she wants. And she stops being that great leader and starts thinking, I'm not going to lose this. I'm going to do everything in my power to keep this. Am I going to rock the boat and push against the CEO? No way. Man, I'm just going to strategize, and I'm going to position myself so I don't lose lose this. And that's what happens, right? So that's the shift. And that's really the root of a lot of what happens in organizations. Why are there so many bad decisions? Why do people spend so much time with CYA covering their butts, right? Why do people lay low? Why do people look the other way when something's going on that they should speak up about, particularly at the executive ranks? So like I said, they no longer are worried about the success of the company, but rather how to keep their success. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, isn't the best way to keep your success individually is to make sure the company is successful? I mean, that's the obvious thing, and that's what we all assume happens. The answer would be yes, but that's really hard. Running a business is hard. There are a lot of variables, including the economy, a lot of things political, changes in legislation, in the market. That doesn't ensure that. So what do people do? They cheat. They really start thinking about positioning and if this goes wrong, how do I position myself with, and who do I align myself with, right? So they start making decisions not based on what's best for the company completely, right? But what's best to keep them in power, right? So it's not really helping the company or helping the employees, at least primarily. So kind of like politicians, all politicians, the day after they're elected, the first point of business is not, hey, how can I serve the American people? It's, hey, I'm going to start my reelection campaign because I want to keep this. This is a cushy job, man. There's a lot of benefits and perks to this job. So that's really what's happening, right? So people want to either start running to be reelected, i.e. keep their jobs for all time and eternity. So they don't really care about you unless you are contributing something that keeps them in their position or adds to their protection, preservation, power, and prestige, right? So that's why you have so many of these leaders who are really just terrible leaders who don't care anybody else. But man, they could give a speech on leadership that make you cry, right? And they tug at your heartstrings and they talk about the values of the company and the mission of it and how important it is. And I see this all the time, man, all the time. All the mission, vision stuff, we've talked about that in an earlier episode. That goes out the door when it comes to keeping what I have. All right, and that's the truth, and that's how it works. That's simple and distilled, and exactly how it happens, right? So the question is, wow, this is crazy, Michael. I never thought of it like that, but it's true, and that's why you have so many bad decisions. So then you have to say, well, I have all these leaders. What do they look like, man? What would it look like? And I would say that then the executives in particular we're talking about, they're on a spectrum, right? You have on one end, you have kind of sociopaths, right, who are just about the power. On the other end, you have good people who've done really well, who've earned their stripes, who got to the position, but in the end, they don't want to lose it either, right? So let's talk about that. So on one end, we kind of have the immoral bastard, if you will. They're very Machiavellian, always about getting theirs, getting paid, making sure they get paid more. They step on their grandmother, I think, if they have to. And I, as I say this, I'm thinking of some executives that I worked with that were brutal people. On the surface, you would have thought, oh, what a sweet guy, what a great guy, it's great. But they know how the world's work, and it works on power, right? And they're okay with this, right? And it's not, they're bad people. It's not because their mama didn't breastfeed them and they were treated bad as a kid, right? They scam the system. They work the system to get where they are, and they'll do whatever they have to do to stay in power, right? So they're almost like a little tyrant, if you will. They tend to be like successful little tyrants, and they like the power, and they lack moral character. Although they'll present themselves as they're a highly ethical person, they lack moral character, and they constantly will kind of work through an immorality filter to make sure they keep in place. Okay. So that's one. That's hard. I've met a few of those, and there are quite a few CEOs in the world that are like that. Number two, it's really 1A on kind of the spectrum. There's some executives who think, man, they're just entitled to it. They either think because they're related, there's some nepotism going on. They went to highly prestigious school, or they come from family pedigree that they just kind of deserve it. They were destined to this role, and they're going to do whatever they have to keep it and do what they have to do it. I remember, I can't remember her name. I do, but I don't want to get political. This is not a political program. But I remember there was one congressperson in Alaska whose family sat in the seat for 2 generations. And she said, that's our family's seat. And I thought, what an entitled attitude. And that would be kind of person who would fit in this realm. Another person, that probably somebody we're in the middle on this degree, on the spectrum, would be somebody who really got to their role and their position, and they're really incompetent at it. So they've made it to the top. They're making this big money, but they know deep down they know they don't really deserve it, and they're really not that competent. And so they spend most of the time not wanting to be found out. Right? So they're going to do things. They're going to keep people in place. They're going to impugn people. They're going to scare people. They're going to take people out at their legs. And they're going to use everything they can to have scheme to the top and to stay at the top, whether it's their charm, leverage, luck, nepotism. They kissed butt, they licked boots, they did whatever they were told to do. And there's our group of people who get promoted because they do whatever the CEO wants them to do. And the CEO regards it as supreme loyalty and rewards them. Not rewards them because they like them and appreciate it. They reward them because they know they have a stoolie kind of working for them. All right, so that's kind of the middle strange. So what's on the other end, which is a good number of these people. So on the other end, there's good moral people who worked really hard, who got to the top, who made it to be an executive, making all this money, more money than they could ever believe. They really made it, and they don't want to lose it. Right? Now, do they generally do active, immoral things? Sometimes, but the majority of what they do that's immoral, if you will, is by looking away, right? By looking at, hey, the CEO's doing something. It's not really copacetic. I'm not gonna get involved, right? Or they see something going on and it doesn't make sense, or it's at least unethical, potentially illegal, and they're like, I'm just gonna look away. I'm not in charge of that, and they rationalize it, right? So generally they don't act immorally, but often they look away and they'll go along to get along. Again, they'll do anything they have to do to keep their position, right? And I say this, I think of somebody I knew who's a great person, but man, when push came to shove, the answer was, hey man, how can you do this? And his answer was, hey man, I got a mortgage and a wife and 3 kids. How can I not do this? Right? And so that's what happens, right? Now you kind of selling your soul at that point, but that's a different discussion. So you have even good people who do not want to lose what they have. So they'll look away. They'll go along with decisions that they know are wrong just to keep their job, right? All righty. Now, that's pretty much the gamut. Now, is every executive like these? No, but the exceptions are relatively few. Okay, because we all get caught up into it. I found myself getting caught up into it. That's why I'm no longer inside. That's why I became a consultant. I didn't really want to sell myself to do that. So are all senior executives sociopaths? Senior executives of large organization sociopaths? No. But sometimes they act it if they are not. And it's hard to deny it, right? They cover things up with their money, their power. And now every organization has an internal comms team to make sure that they kind of run interference, and they create this pristine image of the company or the CEO or the executive for the company, right? And so they're really problematic. There's a lot of things. I could go deeper into this. I've met so many, a lot of them are functioning alcoholics or a-holes. They're not good people. Again, so all of them this bad? No, of course not. Not all of them. Are there a lot of them like this? Yes. And they're not willing to change because they love the power, they love the money, right? They love what they're getting out of it. So it becomes, again, their big driver is not leading the company towards success. Their big driver is to maintain and preserve and keep what they have. So that's it. It's that simple. It's a bunch of people leading the organization who are not leading the organization to be great, but leading it so they keep their stuff. And by the way, I've seen this. I've been in the inner circles. And even within the inner circles, there's inner circles. And there are alliances. It's a lot like Survivor on TV, right? You see people doing it. A lot of times you'll see something go bad in an organization, and the entire executive team is responsible. But what do? Somehow the CEO usually, or the next in charge, will kind of say, I think it was Bob's fault. And all of a sudden everybody's like, cool, if it's not me, yeah, it is Bob's fault. It's not me. Yeah, it is Bob's fault. Then all of a sudden they get a scapegoat. And you see this stuff happening all the time. There's always this deflection away from their actual performance. It's insane to me. But if it goes well, they'll take all the credit. If something goes bad, they'll blame somebody. It's really insane. It's because they have that perch. All right. So then you have to ask yourself, how can executives get away with this so easily? First and foremost, particularly with the super large companies, it's an insider cabal, right? These executives, they all know each other. They take care of each other. They sit on each other's boards and they kind of reward each other. That's why, or one of the main reasons why executive pay has just increased exponentially over the last 20 years. Okay, it used to be that a CEO was about 25 to 40 times the lowest paid person in the company. And now it's like 1,200 to 1,500 more. So we have these like superstar CEOs who, by the way, aren't superstars at all. They're getting paid like superstars, but they didn't do anything for it. All right. So they all know each other. They go to the same country clubs together. They hang in. And once you're in, you're in. It's kind of like Fight Club. You know, once you're in, you're in. You can't talk about it, but you're in. And you kind of take care of each other. Why? Because they're doing the same thing you're doing. Right? They're trying to protect and preserve. You're trying to protect and preserve. They will protect and preserve for each other and keep everybody out. We'll keep it in this little group. So that's one reason. Number two, how can executives get away with it so much? Well, you've heard of the golden rule, right? Which is do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Well, the big rule, unfortunately, in organizations often is the gold rule, which is those with the gold rule. So you see these people taking people out. They'll take shots. They'll protect themselves. They'll ruin other people's lives and careers if it keeps them in power. It happens all the time. I mentioned this already. The internal comms team, their spin on it, still say anything. Internal team will just straight out lie to the employees, right? Just straight out lie to cover up something. And all their job is make the CEO or the senior executives look good. And that's what they're paid to do. It's an inside PR firm to make them look good and to deflect any responsibility or blame. Fourth, we talked about this, scapegoats. Scapegoating is very common in organizations. When the you-know-what hits the fan, executive teams will rally around picking on somebody and taking them out as a team. And then they can feel really good about it because they kept their jobs. It's really good. Often, too, they hide behind the economy, like I said, or the market. This was insane. I worked for a company where there's a head of person who ran stores that sold sunglasses, and he was using a playbook from like the 1980s. It's not very good, not super talented. People said he was a genius because he talked fast, which was insane to me that people would actually push that narrative. But one quarter, this really failed, and they had some really bad marketing going on, some really bad leadership going on, and they blamed that it was cloudier than normal that winter, and that's why they didn't meet their sales goals. So they always have a good excuse. They'll hide behind it. Related to that, they're good at blaming. You know, they're blaming. It's never them. It's everybody else. It's society. It's the market. It's the tariffs. It's this. It's that. It's never them. Okay, which is insane to me. Notice what happens when a CEO and his team, they set a strategy and the strategy fails miserably. They don't lose their jobs. They do a large riff for everybody else in the company, but somehow they keep their jobs, even though they just showed that they can't do their jobs very well. Alrighty, number 8. Let's see. They hire weaklings, right? So a lot of CEOs, a lot of VPs, they'll hire the weakest people and they'll promote the weakest people because they know they will be grateful to these people and will do anything for them. So you have this mini mafia, if you will, right? So you have this executive team, and they have their little kind of people, a lot of them who are moles, right? Or a lot of them who will just kind of do anything they're told to do without question. So they have a little mafia running around. So that's another way they stay in charge. How else do they stay in charge? How is this really truly a reality? I think deep down, nobody wants to believe this is true, how organizations really work. But it's a big part of how organizations really work. You know, they'll say things, they'll try to do things better for the company, but in the end, man, it's all about digging in and protecting what you have. And the last thing is, if you're in the inner circle, you like this, you're okay with it. You know, you understand it, man. Oh, I'm glad that's not me being the scapegoat. Oh, I'm glad I'm keeping my money. We get to riff 415 people. So if you're in the inner circle, you don't see a problem with this. That's how they get away with this for sure. And you have to understand, this is something you can't underestimate. Like I said, the amount of executive compensation has increased exponentially over the last 20 years. So you're talking about people making a lot of money, living very different lives than the common man, right? They fly differently, they shop differently, they eat differently, they live differently. Their houses are insane. So they're not going to lose that, and they're going to do everything they can to maintain it. And that's where this all comes down. All right. So is it bleak? Yeah, in some ways it is. It really is. I mean, The last Gallup poll talked about the engagement in corporations is below 30% now. We've had anti-work movements, right? We had the Great Resignation because they're not only sensing this. A lot of this stuff is leaked because the internet now. It's hard to hide stuff now, so we're seeing it more and more. So what do you need to know about this? Companies have no loyalty to you. By definition, businesses do not have loyalty to you. And that's what happens. When they have rifts, they fire you and say it's nothing personal. It's just a business decision, right? But at the same time, they'll say, hey, you should stay late. You should do this. You should give up this for your company. You should sacrifice for this. You should give us unbridled loyalty. But they have no loyalty to you by definition. But they do know they need slaves and fans. So a lot of times they'll give you just enough bonus, just enough praise so you stay there to do the work in the field. So just know that. Again, is that good or bad? We gotta know what it is. But you have to figure out how you want to play that, how you make that work for you. All right, so what can be done? First, just know how things really work and figure out how to navigate it. That's number one. All right, you know how this works that way, then you got to navigate it. Just make it work for you. All right, and don't lose yourself in it. Right, do not become one of these people, and do not become over demoralized by this. It's just how it works. Unfortunately, it's kind of the human condition that's been around for a long, long time. Second, I advise you to either start your own company or work for a small or mid-sized company. These businesses have their own issues, but generally they're happier issues. They're not as nefarious, these issues. And they tend to be better and healthier to work in. They might not have all the perks of a big company, but they make that up without not dealing with a lot of the bullhooey, as we say, and the large corporations. Third, in reality, the system needs to be reconfigured. I mean, there is a big list for this. It's going to take a revolution. It's coming because we've had the anti-work movement. We have people not wanting to go back to work, right? AI will also change a lot of this. There's a lot of workers or a lot of jobs now that will not be around in the future. Doesn't mean we won't need workers. We'll need different kind of workers. Okay, so I think that's going to change. I'm a big proponent. I'm working on a project that basically makes companies, tap into free agents more and more, for sure. So I think that's important. It'll also take a new form of board and CEO leadership, right? It has to be more accountability to the CEO and to the boards, less incestuous nature of these boards. And they're going to have to, I mean, it's big money. Where there's big money involved, I mean, look what's happening to college football in the NIL. It's just kind of messing it up. When there's big money involved, things get really murky very quickly. So I think it's going to have to be some reduction in CEO pay, particularly if they're not performing well. And there's going to have to be new pay systems for employees, including better profit sharing and better bonusing for employees for sure. And like I said, and finally, some real accountability for CEOs. A lot of people think, oh, I'm a CEO. You're really great. No, you did bad at your last company. You're doing bad at this company. But because you had the title of CEO doesn't mean you're any good at what you're doing. All righty. Should CEOs get big bucks? They should. Being a CEO is a hard thing. It takes broad shoulders to do it. It is not easy. So should they make the big bucks? Yes, if they're performing and if it's relatively ratioed with the other employees in the company. All right. And most important, though, to deal with this, stay true to yourself when you're promoted and you get to the executive ranks. You will have to be smarter and you'll have to be brilliant to pull this off. It's kind of like WWE or WWF or one of those WWs, the wrestling, right? The good guy has a different set of rules than the bad guys. Bad guys always seem to get away with things, right? Or the John Gorka song says, good things happen to people who ain't, right? So if you're going to do this, do it right, do it for yourself, know that you have to be even smarter to pull it off. But realistically, don't sell your soul. And mostly this podcast is here to help you navigate through the accurate picture of the large company workspace. And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to let you know how things really work. So one, like I say, so you could decide who you want to work for, how to navigate your career, and if you are a leader, how to do a better job. And that's really the perfect of work trauma, how corporations really work. So hit me up, likes, follow me if you can. And I like a lot of the comments and questions that I get. So you could put it right at the bottom of wherever you're watching this or email me directly. My email's loaded everywhere. So I hope this is helpful, and we'll see you now in the next episode. Thanks.